Straight line. One extreme case of an indifference curve is a straight line, which occurs when two goods are perfect substitutes, goods that a consumer is completely indifferent as to which to consume. Because Ben cannot taste any difference between Coca Cola and Pepsi Cola, he views them as perfect substitutes. He is indifferent between having one additional can of Coke and one additional can of Pepsi. His indifference curves for these two goods are straight, parallel lines. If a slope of a negative 1 everywhere along the curve, as in panel A of figure 3.5. Thus, Ben's marginal rate of substitution is -1 at every point along these indifference curves. His marginal utility from each good is identical, so the marginal rate of substitution equals negative u sub 1, pardon me. So the marginal rate of substitution equals negative capital U sub 1 over negative capital U sub 2 equals -1. The slope of indifference curves of perfect substitutes need not always be -1. It can be any constant rate. For example, Amos knows from reading the label that Clorox bleach is twice as strong as a generic brand. As a result, Amos is indifferent between 1 cup of Clorox and 2 cups of the generic brand. Amos' utility function over Clorox capital C and the generic bleach capital G is capital U of capital C and G equals I times capital C plus J times capital G. Equation 3.7, where both goods are measured in cups. I equals 2 and J equals 1. His indifference curves are straight lines with a slope or marginal rate of substitution of -I over J equals -2 when the generic bleach is on the vertical axis, superscript 9, which reads, sometimes it is difficult to guess which goods are close substitutes for other people. For example, according to Harper's Index 1994, flowers, perfume, and fire extinguishers rank 1, 2, and 3 among Mother's Day's gifts that Americans consider very appropriate. Figure 3.5 title is titled Perfect Substitutes, Perfect Complements, Perfect Imperfect Substitutes. I'm going to repeat that. Perfect substitutes, perfect complements, and imperfect substitutes. There are three graphs, A, B, and C, and they are labeled as perfect substitutes, perfect complements, and imperfect substitutes. The first one has vertical axis Coke cans per week. On the vertical axis, horizontal axis, Pepsi cans per week. And there are four lines that are perpendicular uh, they're not perpendicular to the axis. The unitary progression of numbers are on each axis are connected by a straight line, and therefore one on the vertical axis is connected with a one on the vertical horizontal axis. That's line capital I superscript 1. And there are 2 and 3 and 4 in the same pattern. B is perfect complements. On the vertical axis, we have ice cream scoops per week, and horizontal axis, pie slices per week. These are L-shaped graphs on graph I sub 1, pardon me, on a difference curve I superscript 1, the graph of perfect complements. Uh, we have lines E, D, A, pardon me, dot points E, D, A being at the intersection of the vertical and horizontal point at the L, and E and D further up on the vertical axis, still on the I, capital I, superscript 1 curve. And there are three indifference curves uh, that repeat in the same pattern at unitary intervals 2 and 3, with B at 2 and C at 3. And the third graph is imperfect substitutes. On this vertical axis, there's burritos per semester, Q sub 2, and the horizontal axis, pizzas per semester, Q sub 1. And there is some unlabeled unitary points along each curve, a horizontal axis, uh, a straight line, connecting those unitary points. On that point, it is a tangent of an indifference curve, capital I. And also at that point is another dotted line, same print as the connecting horizontal line of the approximately 3 points on Q sub 2 and Q sub 1 axis is a uh, L shaped, just like the graph in the perfect complements. And so the text reads, A. Ben views Coke and Pepsi as perfect substitutes. His indifference curves are straight, parallel lines with a marginal rate of substitution slope of -1. Ben is willing to exchange 1 can of Coke for 1 can of Pepsi. B. Maureen likes pie a la mode, but does not like pie or ice cream by itself. She views ice cream and pie as perfect complements. She will not substitute between the two. She consumes them only in equal quantities. C. Lisa views burritos and pizza as imperfect substitutes. Her indifference curve lies between the extreme cases of perfect substitutes and perfect complements.